Hello and welcome to the Business Examiner podcast from the trenches. This afternoon, we've got a great guest for you. It is Kristi Fairholm, mater of the Scale Institute Society and Scale Collaborative. She's speaking with me about the newly launched Business Legacies Incubator funded by the Island Coastal Economic Trust. It's a fantastic initiative that is going to be addressing some challenges both for small businesses who are in need of succession support, as well as nonprofit organizations who are looking to future-proof funding for their organizations and this kind of new focus on social enterprises. So we really hope you enjoy this interview, and we will head over there now.
Sure. So I'm Kristi Fairholm Mater. I am one of the principals with Scale Collaborative. We're based out of Victoria, BC, and work primarily on Vancouver Island and in rural communities and across BC and in other parts of Canada. But we're based here and we love being Islanders and do a lot of our work here. So my background is really in the nonprofit and charity sector. I've worked in the sector for a long time and have been I'm going to say working more as a social entrepreneur within the sector. So running organizations and enterprises that are able to look at innovative and entrepreneurial approaches to creating the change that they're trying to achieve. And so one of the approaches is being able to, diversify revenue streams and to be able to look at how nonprofits and charities can own and operate and start social enterprises. And so myself and the other two principals of Scale Collaborative, Kristi and Lee Heron, came together because all of us had experience in operating and running entrepreneurial organizations like this, including acquiring businesses. So the reason why we came to this work in particular around the Business Legacies Initiative, and Scale does a bunch of other work in addition to this, but around the Business Legacies Initiative is that we've been supporting and working with organizations a lot on how to do social enterprise, right? How to own and operate, businesses that deliver revenues and impact back to the organization or as part of a nonprofit organization. And most nonprofits are starting up social enterprises. So they will do a startup model. And a lot of nonprofits operate enterprising activities and are growing in terms of social enterprises. It's a growing field for sure. But we had experience in acquiring businesses and having them come under nonprofit control and ownership. And so we began to question, well, why aren't more nonprofits doing this, right? Because startup path can be really difficult. Can be really challenging. It can take a number of years before your business is sustainable and generates revenues, and there's a lot of capacity to grow. And acquiring businesses has different challenges, but one of the challenges is not trying to get a business from zero to nothing and make it sustainable. It's you come in with sort of different knowledge and different ground level when you acquire a business. And so that was where we began to look around and understand sort of what's the opportunities and what's the barriers of operating a business as a nonprofit or a charity. And at the same time, we're seeing that there's an upcoming shift of business ownership due to the boomer generation, and that there will be a significant number of businesses that are going to come for sale within the next 5 to 10 years. And so for us, we think in communities, especially in smaller communities, being able to acquire those businesses and hold them as community assets, as democratically owned assets or assets where the profits are going back into supporting community is a real opportunity to solve two problems.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting to hear. It reminds me of, because I know there's Community Futures, the Alberni Clayoquot, I hope I'm saying that right. Mm-hmm. They bought Coombs Country Candy, right? Is that part under this umbrella, or is that just kind of a happenstance?
So they are a partner in the project and they are in the advisory group. And so we've used their experience to help identify and create a case study on other nonprofits who might be able to. So we have a number of case studies, and they are one of the case studies that's going to help inform the process of supporting other organizations to do a similar thing.
Awesome. Are you allowed to speak at all about what some of those other test cases are going to be, or is that kind of under wraps for now?
So we have test cases in the past that we've been using as that case study. So, Fernwood Energy They acquired a yoga studio. They acquired a hair salon. So we've used those as other experiences, and that's down in Victoria. So that's available to look at in terms of identifying those case studies. And then since the press release has gone out, I've been contacted by about 3 nonprofits that are also looking at considering acquiring, as well as we have a couple of others through our surveys and interviews that have said we really want to try and see if we can move this forward as well.
That's awesome. So if pretend that I'm, a nonprofit, can you walk me through kind of, maybe a Cole's notes on how you coach them or walk them through this acquisition process, and then B, the profit, it's no longer a dirty word. It's now a revitalization word, a future word.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why we've identified needing something, there's lots of business buying and selling that happens in community all the time, right? And there's supports that provide great resources and assistance to help people to do that. And Community Futures and Venture Connect do that. What's missing is that a nonprofit governance and legal and financial structure is very different. So it's not an individual or a family deciding to acquire something. There's many layers of governance and decision-making and assessment and trying to figure out where the values alignment is. Like there's just all those considerations. So the first part of the process is to say, is this something that our organization wants to do? And then to get those decision-making processes in place to be able to set the criteria, to be able to set sort of the values place, to be able to look for those businesses and proactively approach them. So that's a really key part. And then one of the main barriers of nonprofits and acquiring businesses is that when a business comes up for sale, because those decision-making processes are more complex, they take a longer time. And so nonprofits can lose out on opportunities because the time frame that they need in order to go through the approval process and the decision-making process just is not fast enough for the sale of the business. So our goal with the Business Acquisition Incubator is to have nonprofits get themselves ready so that when the businesses are come up for sale that do meet their criteria, so it's looking at what are your criteria, what are you trying to achieve, then they're all ready with their ducks in a row so they can be competitive in that acquisition. We're also looking at business owners, how they transition those businesses, and how do you transition a business from a traditional business into a social enterprise. And so we look at that transition plan of capacity as well as values as a business becomes a community owned social enterprise. And a lot of it is around transitioning the community goodwill that the business might already have, right? And making sure a nonprofit understands the sector that it operates within in the industry, which is the new information that they might have to gain, and having that transition period take place over 1 to 3 years, right? It's not always just a quick exit out. So it's a different kind of process as well in order to do that. And we see that business owners who really are deeply embedded in their community actually care about their legacy. And so this transition of being able to transition their employees to this kind of ownership, to know that their business is going to have some legacy and community is makes it appealing for them. And so most of the case studies and conversations that we've had where this has been successful has had that transition plan. And then the other piece is to consider how do you finance it. Nonprofits have faced barriers to financing. And so thinking through those financing in advance. And there's some really interesting, innovative ways that those barriers are being overcome. And then how do you own it? And again, nonprofits are able to own businesses. So usually the business is still a separate entity, but it's owned by the nonprofit. And then the profits go back in to support the nonprofit's core activities. Mm. So that's all permitted and provides opportunity for nonprofits. And sometimes that arm's length distance also then allows that business to do what it needs to do in order to be a really, really good, a good business within the community. And then it's about the question is, where do the profits go? And here's where the profits go back into supporting the activities of the nonprofit.
Okay. Very cool. Can you elaborate a bit on the financing stuff? Because I know, like Community Futures, we have experience with one of my staff members is on the board for the Central Island. We have a good relationship with them, and so I would, them as I could imagine that they're probably a potential funding source. Is there anybody else or anything, an alternative financing strategy that you guys have in mind? Or
Yes. So, I mean, community futures are a fantastic resource in communities. And, we also always encourage having the conversations with your credit union or your financial institution in advance so that you can think through like what are the challenges or how do you begin to put together the financing. There's also, a really exciting rising impact investment sector that's looking for these kind of enterprises to invest in. And Scale Collaborative is part of developing a fund that will help to support and fill the gaps where there are barriers to nonprofits accessing the kind of patient and flexible capital that will allow them to acquire. So there is a specific space where there's an opportunity for the kind of financing that Scale Collaborative is going to provide, and that the community futures provide, and often in partnership with each other. And the challenge for nonprofits tends to be around who guarantees the loan, right? There's issues around collateral, who guarantees the loan. There's issues around revenue, right? They're not counting grant revenue or donation revenue as secured revenue. Like there's some issues that make nonprofits seem risky, even though these organizations have been in community often for decades and continue to grow and deliver services. The financial system doesn't sort of recognize their business model as one that is one that they want to take a chance on. So it just becomes a little bit more risk averse. So we need that money and those resources that will allow nonprofits and charities to be able to also grow, build assets, become stronger, have enterprising revenue streams, and so on. So those gaps are being filled.
Fantastic. It's very cool. It's a very cool solution to a problem that, we hear about when we're talking to companies. And it's certainly outside the box. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. If you didn't mind, I wanted to ask you a couple sort of personal career questions. I went through your LinkedIn and then your company site, your organization site. You guys do a ton of different things. Mm-hmm. And for you specifically, there's been some consistency in your career. Is it, at least from what's on LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of social good that's kind of at the focus the theme of your career is what outside looking in. Can you speak to what's driven that? Because it's often you see people kind of hop around to do different things, but yours has been pretty steady, different organizations, but a vein of social good.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a family where, my uncles work in the prison system doing volunteering connection to prisoners. I work with, my mom, who's been a social entrepreneur, pushing forward violence prevention and safe spaces for children and anti-bullying stuff. I'm in a family where social good and how we give back to the world has been a value that's been very high. And so when I went to go do university, that was the sort of place that I started, which is, I went and did child and youth care and was a youth worker. Now, it wasn't quite a fit for me. I'm a little more introverted than youth workers need to be. So not saying there's not great introverted youth workers, there are. But for me, I wanted to begin to look at how I could create change in a different way. And I'm just the way that I think and the way that I see opportunity tends to fit more in the line of business and community and economic development and those kind of areas of change and thinking that if we can change how the economies work and how we value the different kind of benefits that enterprising approaches and innovation can deliver, and we value it by looking at those multiple bottom line solutions. I really feel like we have the potential to build a more regenerative economy, a more community-based economy, a more economy that looks after people and planet alongside of financial sustainability. And so that has just always resonated with me. So I've continued to move forward in looking at what I consider the ecosystem, which is, what are the enterprises that are delivering great value in terms of their products and services and social value, environmental value. How do we spend our money, institutionally and as people to direct those kind of dollars towards such enterprises? And then how do we invest in those entities so that they can do more good and grow and scale and become a force to be reckoned with? So those are the areas that I continue to work in, which is enterprise procurement and investment. And I see so much exciting stuff happening in all of those areas.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I got 3 quick ones for you. Again, outside looking in, it looks like you have a heavy workload. with everything that your organization does. How do you structure your days and weeks to manage everything that you've got coming at you?
Yeah, I think in this kind of work and in so many work, you sort of sit on the balance of capacity, like right on the razor's edge of capacity. And so sometimes I feel like it's good, and I have a day where I put my feet up and get to have thinking conversations and so on. And other weeks I definitely feel on that edge. So we try to track out where we're going to be 6 months in advance and try to anticipate our capacity needs coming up and hire for them before those capacity needs become too intense. And then we're very careful about hiring and making sure that we're hiring people that bring their innovation and bring their self-motivation to it, so that we're working together in partnership, so that we can be nimble and grow with the right people. So it's getting the right people on the bus. And then we really, really work through networks and partnerships. So all of our work that we do, with the projects that we do, underneath it is contractors, our partners, our other people that are aligned, and we find ways to then bring and build strong partnerships that allow us to not only do something really great in that initiative or what we're doing there, but also our organizations or our partnerships, they also then get to grow and expand and enhance, build on what they're doing. So I think those are the ways that we manage our capacity.
Awesome. Thank you. Best personal advice that you've received that's kind of impacted your career?
One of my bosses said, we're working on the problems that aren't going to be solved by your generation. You're always working on a problem that's not going to be solved by your generation. So you need to think big and think long term. And that's allowed me to both take hope, when things feel stuck or feel difficult, but it's also allowed me to let go. So it's been helpful as a guiding star of knowing that the things that I'm working on now today will be advanced, but they're also, the solutions are potentially beyond my own personal career.
Awesome. Last one for you. Favorite restaurant on Vancouver Island?
Oh my gosh, so many. And I love to eat out all the time. Let's see, who have I loved? I love Fifth Avenue. I'm going to give a Fifth Avenue Bar and Grill shout out because it's my neighborhood pub. And I just walked down there the other day, and they're so friendly, and they make their pizzas in one of those wood burning stove ovens. And it's always a great go-to, but there's so many.
Thank you very much for stopping by this episode of From the Trenches, the Business Examiner podcast. A very special thank you to Kristi for taking time out of her busy schedule to speak with us. There will be links to her organization and the new program discussed in the podcast in the description. And as always, have a fantastic week, and we will talk to you next Monday afternoon.